Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching The World Report. Let's first take a look at our headlines. Ahead of the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, President Zelensky has said he is willing to step down if there is peace, alluding to NATO membership. Zelensky also responded to Trump's dictator comments as EU leaders arrive in Kyiv for the anniversary. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that Israel may resume the war in Gaza amid uncertainty over the ceasefire with Hamas. Israeli military action has stepped up around Gaza and in the West Bank as Arab leaders meet in Egypt to discuss the war. Friedrich Merz's Conservatives have won the German federal election, with the right-wing AfD finishing second, securing a record vote share of just over 20%. Merz has ruled out working with the AfD, but forming a coalition could be complicated after the Social Democrats suffered their worst result ever. Some US administration officials have urged federal workers to ignore a message from Elon Musk's Doge. It called for staff to detail what work they had done in the week or resign. One of the organisations urging workers to ignore the request is the FBI, run by Trump ally Kash Patel. Germany's snap elections are now over with a clear winner. Friedrich Merz's Conservatives have won well ahead of his rivals, but slightly short of the 30% votes that they had expected. They will not be able to form a government of their own and are looking towards a coalition with Olaf Scholz's third-placed Social Democrats. At 69, Merz has never served in a ministerial position, but he has vowed that if elected as Germany's next Chancellor, he will provide strong leadership in Europe and enhance support for Ukraine. Many Germans have been taken aback by US President Donald Trump's actions towards Ukraine and Europe. Merz has stated that Trump's behaviour demonstrates that Americans are largely indifferent to Europe's future. The other big winner in Sunday's vote was the far-right Alternative for Germany, who are celebrating a record second-place result of 20.8%. The AfD's candidate for Chancellor, Alice Weidel, did a victory lap of her supporters, but even her party had hoped for a greater result, and the mood at AfD headquarters were subdued. Joining us first to discuss this, we are joined by Florian Neuhoff, who is a freelance journalist in Germany. Florian, thank you so much for your time. I imagine the last 12 to 24 hours for you have been extremely busy, but looking at this result that we have had, I want to get the feeling that is coming out of Germany right now and an understanding, because it seems that the leading parties were hoping for more, though they have, of course, made sure that they are getting record results or winning the election.
Yes, there has been, like you mentioned in your introduction, some disappointment, especially among the CDU, who had been hoping for a little more of the share of votes. Also, though, there is, I believe, some relief that a coalition of the CDU and the SPD is now possible, given that two of the smaller parties failed to make it into parliament, meaning that those two parties can form a majority coalition, which makes it a lot easier to run effectively, govern effectively. We saw in the last government that a three-way coalition is cumbersome and full of conflict, and it greatly hindered it to be an effective governing force internally, and also in regards to the challenges that we are facing abroad. You mentioned Ukraine. We have Trump now in the White House again, so we need a government that is able to take decisions, and I believe we have a means. We can form. We will be seeing this kind of government.
Absolutely, and looking at one of the big winners of the night, of course, AfD. The other parties have ruled out a coalition, but do you think this is a blueprint potentially for future elections? The rise in popularity, the concern around migration, around citizenship is a conversation that we've spoken about on NewsX for a few months now, but also that growing feeling that more potentially needs to be done. What's your feeling on that?
It very much remains to be seen whether this is the high watermark of the AfD. They have doubled their vote share, but we shouldn't forget that they still remain at only 20%, which is comparatively little if you look to countries like France, where the right wing is expected to gain a lot more in the coming elections. And if you look to America, where far-right extremists, hence the Republican Party, have gained over half of all votes. So I think we shouldn't forget that the strong performance by the AfD is predicated on a series of crises which have buffeted Germany. It's that we've come out of the corona pandemic, we've then slid straight into the Ukraine war, we've been in recession for 2 years. These sort of things cause a great deal of uncertainty with the electorate, which always generally tends to translate into extremism, an increased share of the vote from by extremists. So if the new government does a good job, manages to bring the economy back to decent levels, if the war in Ukraine ends and there will be some more stability in Europe, there is also a chance that this trend will abate and the AfD will not perform as well in upcoming elections.
Florian, I also want to touch on the input that there's been from America. Of course, Elon Musk has held live talks with the AfD leader, also Donald Trump commenting on the election as well. Do you think that played a part, if any? And also, how do you think that future relationships between the US and Germany might be now that the AfD haven't won and it is going to be a more conservative government by the looks of it?
Well, I personally believe that Elon Musk's interference hasn't cost any of the Democratic parties a single vote. It'll probably cost his car company Tesla a lot of sales, given that the people who buy electric cars are not the ones likely to vote for fascist parties. So I don't think that's had a great impact. I think he's vastly overestimated his influence in the German political sphere. The fact that we will in all likelihood have a conservative chancellor, could be a good thing with Trump, who obviously comes from the right. I do think that the positions that Trump holds are so antithetical to positions held in Europe and by Merz himself that we will see significant conflict, and it will be a tough task to manage those relations going forward.
Yes, also joining us to discuss the election, we're joined by Keith Vaz, who is the chairman of the Integration Foundation, joining us from London. Keith, thank you very much for being here. With your own political background and looking at this now away from Germany and looking at the wider ecosphere of Europe, not just EU countries, of course, the United Kingdom as well, do you think this is a result that will be favourable to them in terms of the joint goal and the joint challenges that they're facing, as mentioned already, America, also Ukraine and Russia and the ongoing war? Where do you think that the politicians like Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron will have been this morning waking up seeing the results?
Good morning, Joshua. I think this is a really good result for the European Union and for the whole of Europe, and indeed for the world. Because it could easily have gone the other way. And if the AfD had done even better, this would have been trumpeted as a great victory for the Republican Party in America and their clear interference in the operation of a democratic election in a sovereign country. We don't know as much, of course, about the Chancellor-elect. I assume that he's going to be asked to form a government, as we did for his most famous predecessor, Angela Merkel. But Germany is at the heart of Europe. Europe cannot function without a strong Germany. And it seems very, very clear that the electors of Germany, yes, they've given a lot of votes to the AfD, but not enough for them to be that big credible force that's going to affect the way in which the next government's going to operate. So I think Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, everyone is waking up delighted at the result. It could easily have gone in a different direction. I'm very disappointed at the showing of the SPD. I mean, this is the party of Schroeder, of Helmut Schmidt, of Willy Brandt. Such a short period in office. How disappointing that they did so badly. Where did they all go wrong? I mean, Florian has talked about the difficulty in putting together a coalition of a number of parties. That may well be the case. You have to constantly compromise, but it must be a bitter blow for them. But what I thought was the most interesting aspect of this election is not the result, which of course we expect Germany to be boring. This is a very good result. It's a very exciting result for the future of Europe. But the speech made by Friedrich Merz, when he talked about the independence of Europe from the United States, I've never heard a German chancellor-elect, leader of a major party, talk in those terms. What it shows is maybe we were so totally dependent on the United States. Here is the leader of Europe, so he will be, once he gets his feet under the table, as Macron starts his long goodbye of 2 years, he will lead Europe. There's no doubt about that. He is saying Europe needs to be independent. It needs to be strong. It needs to back Ukraine. It needs to have its own independent defense force, independent of the United States of America. And I think this is very, very important language, and language that we've never heard before from a German leader. So let's hope that everyone can build on that. I think there'll be Keir Starmer, Macron, Merz, very similar politics, different parties, of course. One on the kind of centre left, one on the right, one right down the middle. But I think they'll get on very well. If these are the three leaders who are going to take us through, along with Donald Tusk in Poland over the next few years, I think Europe is in very, very good hands. We could not have expected or wanted a better result than this. To form a government, to be very clear, the AfD will not be part of the government. I think is going to be a blow to Marianne Le Pen in France and all other countries when they thought this was a momentum. After Trump, the coattails were going to bring in all these people. This is a very good result for Europe.
Keith Vaz, very quickly, we've got less than a minute left, but I do want to look at the fact that this government might not be formed until Easter. Do you think this election has come at a bad time, considering what's happening with Russia and Ukraine and the importance of strong EU leadership around discussions and around sidelining, let's be honest, from the US and from Russia in these negotiations?
Well, what needs to happen is that Chancellor Scholz should make sure that the Chancellor-elect works with him on everything. There's a way of doing it. I've seen it myself at European Council meetings when there's an election and there's a bit of a lag between people coming in and leaving. He's got to bring him along. They've got to be seen to be a double act. And that's how Germany remains strong, Europe remains strong, and the message goes out to the United States and to the people of Ukraine. It's all about mood music. It's all about who you take to the dance. And I think these two gentlemen, the current Chancellor and the future Chancellor, need to work hand in hand on foreign policy.
Yes, thank you very much to Keith Vaz, and also thank you to Florian Neuhoff for both joining us and providing that insight. We now move on, and Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces have signed a charter to establish a rival government, intensifying the nation's political and military turmoil with accusations of crimes against humanity and mounting international concern. The country edges closer to deeper fragmentation and crisis. Let's have a look at this report.
Sudan's paramilitary Rapid Support Forces has signed a charter with allied political and armed groups to form a government of peace and unity amid the country's ongoing 20-month war. The signing took place behind closed doors in Nairobi, Kenya, as the Sudanese armed forces continue to make gains against the RSF in Khartoum and other regions. The RSF has been accused of crimes against humanity and ethnic cleansing, with international bodies and the US raising concerns over its actions. The newly signed charter calls for a secular, democratic state with a single national army, but still allows armed groups to exist independently. Sudan's army-aligned government has rejected the parallel government, warning it will not accept any country recognizing the RSF-led administration. The United Nations has cautioned that this move could deepen Sudan's fragmentation and worsen the ongoing crisis. The conflict has killed over 20,000 people and displaced more than 14 million, creating a humanitarian disaster across the region. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now take a look at the latest from across North America. American Airlines says in a statement that the flight travelling from New York to Delhi was diverted to Rome after a possible security issue. There were 199 passengers on the plane, as well as 15 crew members, when the aircraft was made aware of the problem. The issue was later proved to be non-credible. The Roman airport told reporters that Italian Air Force fighter jets escorted the aircraft to Leonardo da Vinci Rome International Airport. President Donald Trump is hosting a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer this week. According to reports, Trump has made demands for territory in Greenland, Canada and Gaza and the Panama Canal. He has also asked for precious rare earth minerals from Ukraine. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has appointed right-wing commentator Dan Bongino as Deputy Director of the FBI. Trump has posted on social media that Bongino is a man of incredible love and passion for our country and would serve under newly appointed FBI Director Kash Patel. 50-year-old Bongino, who has worked for the New York Police Department and the Secret Service, he also hosts a popular self-titled podcast. US President Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff has said that he is heading to the Middle East this week to discuss an extension to Phase 1 of the Israel-Hamas peace deal. Witkoff told reporters that he is hopeful to begin Phase 2. He wants to get more hostages released quickly. The first phase of the truce ends early in March. US House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan has demanded that EU Chief Teresa Ribera clarifies how she enforces the European Union's rules reining in big tech. Reports say that he thinks they appear to target US companies. The request came 2 days after US President Donald Trump signed a memorandum warning that his administration would scrutinise the EU's Digital Markets Act and the Digital Services Act. The Canadian Armed Forces are no longer requiring some applicants to take an aptitude test when they apply to join the military. Canada's military is short of more than 13,600 members. Reports say by early summer they will start screening more people with pre-existing medical conditions. They will give new recruits with medical conditions a shot at joining rather than automatically turning them away. Major General Scott Malcolm, the military Surgeon General, told reporters that people with conditions including ADHD, anxiety and asthma can apply now to the military. Several US federal agencies have rebelled US President Donald Trump's advisor Elon Musk's orders. He had asked employees to report their work accomplishments or lose their jobs. However, employees, including from the FBI, have been asked to ignore the mail. Meanwhile, Trump continues his takedown of US aid. Here is a detailed report.
Rebelling the campaign by US President Trump's advisor Elon Musk, several Trump-appointed agency leaders urged federal workers not to comply with Musk's order to summarize their accomplishments for the past week or be removed from their positions. Trump administration appointed officials at varied agencies including the FBI and the Departments of Defense, State, Energy, Health and Human Services and Homeland Security told their staff not to respond outside their chains of command. Trump-appointed FBI Director Kash Patel, in an email sent to staff, said, "The FBI, through the Office of the Director, is in charge of all our review processes." Musk's email had even reached the inboxes of sitting federal judges. The Administrative Office for the Federal Courts advised judges and staff that this email did not originate from the judiciary or the Administrative Office, and we suggest that no action be taken. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has placed most USAID employees back on administrative leave from midnight on Sunday and laid off hundreds more. The notice to USAID employees from the Office of the Administrator said that designated personnel responsible for critical functions or in leadership would be exempt from administrative leave. In addition to some 4,200 staff who are being placed on leave, at least 1,600 employees are being fired. It's not clear how many employees will be kept on, but USAID had previously deemed 611 personnel to be essential. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We'll now take a look at the latest from the world of business. South Africa is facing widespread power cuts as Eskom, which is the national energy provider, announced rolling blackouts due to multiple failures at coal-fired power plants. The electricity load shedding, which can last up to 12 hours a day, comes after a period of improvements and follows years of crippling power shortages. Eskom is under pressure to transition to renewable energy while managing its significant debt and ongoing challenges with plant maintenance. Alibaba announced plans to invest around $53 billion in AI and cloud computing over the next 3 years, marking its largest tech investment yet. The move follows co-founder Jack Ma's recent meeting with President Xi and comes amid a surge in Alibaba's stock to 3-year highs. This strategy aims to drive long-term innovation and AI-powered growth through specific project details haven't been disclosed. Asian markets mostly fell after Wall Street's peak performance, and disappointing US economic data raised concerns about inflation and interest rates. Meanwhile, Germany's conservative CDU alliance secured a major election win, boosting the euro. Oil prices continued their slide amid fears of weakening demand and a possible easing of sanctions on Russian exports. Indonesia's President Prabowo Subianto launched a new sovereign wealth fund, Danatra, aiming to manage over $900 billion in state assets to drive economic growth. With an initial $20 billion budget, the fund is set to finance major projects, but has sparked protests over austerity measures. Indian stocks are seeing a significant drop in price-earnings ratios, with the Nifty 100 index falling 17.2% from September 2024 to the end of year. Experts suggest that while there is a risk of further declines, the current dip presents potential buying opportunities for long-term investors. Stocks from the Adani Group and other large-cap companies like Bell, Bharti Airtel and BPCL have seen sharp declines in their pre-ratios. The future of global oil markets is uncertain, with US President Donald Trump's policies playing a significant role. His drill, baby drill approach aims to boost domestic production, but he also seeks lower oil prices to ease consumer burdens. Trump's focus on using oil for political leverage, especially regarding the Russia-Ukraine war, could further influence oil prices. As his policies unfold, the market faces potential volatility, but a sense of stability could eventually emerge. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced his readiness to step down if it would secure peace or facilitate Ukraine's entry into NATO. Concurrently, he has rejected US demands for a $500 billion mineral extraction deal, arguing it would impose unsustainable debt on future generations. These developments come amid heightened tensions and ongoing conflict in the region. Let's take a look on the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Так, з останнього. Якщо мир для України, якщо вам дуже потрібно, щоб я залишив свій пост, я готовий. Друга історія, можу поміняти це на НАТО. Якщо є такі умови, одразу, щоб довго про це не говорити. Я фокусуюсь на безпеці України сьогодні, а не за 20 років. І не збираюсь бути у влади десятиріччя. Тому це, напевно, мій фокус і бажана мрія.
Ukrainian President Zelensky has stated his willingness to resign if it would bring peace to Ukraine or facilitate the country's admission into NATO following the US's increasing pressure on the government. Despite pressure from the US, Zelensky has rejected a $500 billion mineral extraction deal, citing concerns over long-term debt for Ukrainians. The proposed deal was intended to repay wartime aid provided by the US under the Biden administration. However, Zelensky asserts that such a deal would be detrimental to Ukraine's future. Zelensky emphasized that the aid received was in the form of grants, not loans, and should not be repaid through such resource deals. The Ukrainian president also highlighted the absence of specific security guarantees in the proposed agreement, further justifying his rejection.
Від Трампа я дуже хочу розуміння одне одного, почути, що відбувається, які гарантії безпеки потрібні Україні. Частково це було в плані перемоги України, щоб Україна була сильна за столом перемовин. І гарантії безпеки від Трампа дуже потрібні.
This decision comes amidst US-Russia peace talks led by President Trump and Vladimir Putin, from which Ukraine has been excluded. Trump has criticized Zelensky, labeling him a dictator for not holding elections during the ongoing conflict, to which Zelensky responded by citing the impracticality of elections during war.
Я би не назвав ці слова в мою адресу від президента Трампа компліментами, м'яко кажучи. Я розумію це, так. Але для чого ображатись? Ображався би на слово диктатор той, хто є диктатор. А так я це сприймаю як, ну що ж, зробиш. Ну, будемо якось жити зі Сполученими Штатами Америки. Да, диктаторами точно не будемо, просто не цікаво. Не цікаво, розумієте? Я законно обраний президент, не через якусь силу, той, що прийшов до влади, не прийшов, мене обрали, 73%.
Zelensky has stated that he remains open to negotiations that would benefit Ukraine, but insists on fair agreements that do not impose unfair burdens on the country. Bureau Report, NewsX.
That's unfortunately all we have time for, but we'll be back very soon with more of your latest international news.